Alright guys, today we're going to be going over the Unit 1 assessment on order of operations. You should have your sheet in front of you that's you highlighted what you did correct or what you did wrong so that you make sure you're watching those questions. As we go through this, feel free to take notes. It's the test questions. If you got a question correct, you can skip to the next question. You don't have to watch the full video, but make sure you understand the questions that you got wrong. If we look at our first question, if x equals 5, then 2x cubed plus 3x squared plus 10 equals. So we're evaluating. Everywhere we see an x, we're going to put a 5. And the one rule you have to remember about evaluating is you need to put that number in parentheses. So it is 2, in parentheses we have 5 cubed plus 3, in parentheses again, 5 squared plus 10. Now, you can type that right in your calculator, but make sure that you're typing it in with the parentheses and the correct exponents. If we do it using order of operations, first things first, we need to do our exponents. So I'm going to do 2. 5 to the third power is 125, plus 3 times 5 to the second power is 25, plus 10. So if I look at my order of operations, I didn't have grouping symbols. I've done my exponents. So now I need to do multiplication and division and go left to right. Well, all I have is multiplication, so I'm going to do that part next. 2 times 125 is 250, plus 3 times 25 is 75, and I'm just going to bring down the plus 10 because we didn't have to multiply it. I've now finished those steps, so now we need to add and subtract. And again, we're going to go from left to right. So 250 plus 75 is 325 plus 10, and 325 plus 10 is 335. Again, you can use your calculator for this. That very first line, you can type it directly in your calculator. Just make sure you put the parentheses in. It makes a difference in your problem, especially when there's negative numbers in the problem. But it's a good way to self-check. If you did it by hand, you get 335. If you type it in the calculator, you get 335. So use that as a self-check method. Question 2. If y equals negative 5 and z equals negative 3, what is the value of y squared minus z squared over z minus 1? So again, we're substituting our numbers in. Everywhere we see a y, we're going to put a negative 5, and everywhere we see a z, we're going to put a negative 3. Now, this is really important to put those parentheses because of those negative numbers. So, y is negative 5 squared minus z is negative 3 squared over z is negative 3 minus 1. So, if I'm doing order of operations, grouping symbols, the top's grouped together and the bottom's grouped together, but let's go through. Now we need to do our exponents. Negative 5 squared, when you go to type this in the calculator, you need to make sure that you put parentheses, negative 5, close it, and square it. That's going to give you a positive 25. If you were to just type negative 5 without the parentheses and squared, it's going to give you a negative 25, which is going to change your entire problem. So make sure you are typing it in with those parentheses. So if I solve both my exponents, negative 5 squared is 25 minus negative 3 squared is 9, all over negative 3 minus 1. Now, I do have division. However, we need to remember our top is grouped together and our bottom is grouped together. So we're going to solve those before we divide. 25 minus 9 gives me 16. And on the bottom, negative 3 minus 1. And if you're not sure for your negatives, type it in your calculator. It gives you negative 4. 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. You can type this entire problem in your calculator. Or if you're not comfortable with typing a fraction in your calculator, type the top in, get an answer, type the bottom in, get an answer, and then do the division. But please use your calculator as a self-check method. If y equals negative 3x plus 3, what is y when x equals 2/3? Now, it's asking what is y. That means we don't know what that is, but it gives us an x. So we're going to take that value for x and plug it in. Negative 3 times 2/3 plus 5. Well, we know how to solve that. That's order of operations. I don't have any grouping symbols. I don't have any exponents, so now I need to multiply and divide. Well, if I multiply a whole number times a fraction, we're going to do 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6, and then negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. And again, if you're not sure, use that calculator. We're going to bring down the plus 5. Well, now the only step left I have is to add negative 2 plus 5 is positive 3. So even though it looks different because it says what is y, we don't know what y is, so that's what we're solving for. That's our answer. In this case, y is equal to 3. Evaluate our expression for when x equals negative 9. So again, we're going to substitute it in, putting it in parentheses. These bars, we have to remember, mean absolute value. And absolute value means my number is always going to be positive. I'm still going to put it in parentheses and put it in there. And again, in parentheses at the end. Well, absolute value, if I follow order of operations, absolute value is a grouping symbol. The absolute value of negative 9 is positive 9. And I'm going to keep it in parentheses, but I'm going to take it out of the absolute value bars. That way I still remember to multiply it. I'm going to bring everything else down as it is. So we did that. Now we need to do our exponents. Again, with the exponents, please make sure you wrote it on your paper in parentheses. Make sure you type it in your calculator in parentheses. This becomes positive 81, but we're subtracting 81. From here, we want to multiply. 3 times 9 is 27, plus 8 minus 81. And from here, we're just going to go in order. 27 plus 8 is 35, minus 81. 35 minus 81 should give us negative 46. Question 5. What is the value of this expression when a equals 64 and b equals negative 5? Now, in this expression, we have negative 2 out in front of the cube root of 64 plus negative 5 squared. The important thing you need to remember with this, that cube root stops after the letter a. So the only number that goes underneath that cube root symbol is the value of a, which is 64. Now, when we do the cube root of 64, we get a value of 4. You can either type it in your calculator or you can solve it by hand. The thing you need to keep in mind, when you get multiple pairs and multiple triplets, we multiply them. So if I have a number out in front, that's saying negative 2 times the value of 4 I get for the cube root of 64. I've done my grouping symbols, so now I need to do my exponents. Negative 5 squared, again, please put it in the calculator with the parentheses there. Negative 5 squared is positive 25. Negative 2 times 4, we're doing our multiplication, becomes negative 8 plus 25. And finally, negative 8 plus 25 gives us a value of 17. If you chose or had written negative 33 as your value, it means you had typed negative 5 squared into your calculator. It means you typed negative 5 in your calculator without the parentheses. And so you got a negative 25 for negative 5 squared instead of a positive 25. And it makes a difference in your problem. Please let us know if you have any questions on these and be prepared to take your retakes next week.